Hello, my friends. If I could, I would have us all sitting together in a room that was cozy, drinking tea or coffee or whatever, beverage you wanted, and be sharing this with you. But since I can't, I wanted to. There's way too much to say in text, and I really wanted to speak this to those of you who I have invited to hear this. Wow, what a couple of years, especially what a year, really. I wanted a place where I could where I could speak and brag a little bit, I guess. Not really brag, but share the excitement about some big revelations that I had last night about reclaiming my magic and some of the stuff that I've been doing. And I also wanted to be able to express to you my deep, deep gratitude and appreciation. So bear with me. I will try not to be rambly, but you know how I am. And it's weird talking to you, but talking to myself. So anyway, so sometime around spring of last year, so just about a year ago, maybe a tiny bit earlier, I started really actively engaging the energies of the West. And the West is the space holder. She's the sacred guardian for dreams and visions. And she holds those dreams and visions for people so that they're safe, so that they're kept alive, so that they're kept nourished, so that whenever people are ready to reconnect to their dream and their vision, they're there. And things went so colossally different than what I expected when I moved to Oregon that I went through a really rough time and felt like I had lost a lot of who I thought I was. And, a lot of you were there witnessing that in me, that it was, had some serious doubts about whether I could be an entrepreneur at all, whether I had any magic or any talents, or it was just all this kind of fluke, or worse, that it was all related to being in Utah and I, blah, 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 blah. And as I started to come out of that, I began really calling on the energies of the West and asking for an awakening of my dreams and my vision for myself. And through that process, as I was doing that on a daily basis and really connecting to that energy, some things began indeed to awaken in me again. And some really cool, things began to happen. I started working with clients again, started really reconnecting to that space inside myself and how that feels. And I started remembering just all the things I was dreaming of, not just with clients, but with my body, with my money, with the experiences that I was dreaming about having, all of those things. And it was a blissful awakening, and in the same kind of thing, it was painful at the same time because of what I had created with working a job. And I don't say created in a judgy McJudgerton way. It's just that's what I believed I could do. That's where my belief level was at the time. So I began opening up to that, and then I began realizing that, okay, so there are some things energetically and logistically that are in the way for me to be able to live this dream. So I began calling in very intentionally, working with the power of the South at that time, which is the power of fire. And fire is a few things. It's the great transmuter. It takes the big, heavy oak log that weighs a ton and is solid, and completely alchemizes it into this substance that's soft and light and easily swept away. And So I began asking for the energies of fire to come in and, clear the blocks. And also, fire is the illuminator. So I began asking fire to show me what it was that was unseen that I needed to see. What is it that I'm not seeing that if I did see would make all the difference? It was actually a question from you, Angela, in one of our conversations. And that in and of itself brought some big, powerful things. This was what brought the day when everybody at work was calling me sweet, and the situation in the break room with people promoting rape culture, and my introduction to Mother Mary, and my healing through some of that stuff, and the things that shifted in me. I believe it was also a big part of my session that I had with Jen Tasneem. And for those of you who don't know what Jen does, well, it's more complicated than this, but let me put it this way. What I experience in her is a woman who is a channeler of the divine light, and a woman who holds heart space like no one I've ever seen. And so in this session with her, what it did for me is, in her questions, she took me back into my heart and what did my heart want. And when we got to that piece, she invited me in a way I've never been invited before to own my value. And what I had been, so I'd heard own your value, and Angela, I'm sure you're like, because I know you've heard that ad nauseum and seen it, used in some pretty fucked up ways. But because of Jen Tasneem and who she is, her heart space that she holds, it was a different kind of connection. And what I realized in working with her is that I had been trying to figure out how I wanted to bring money and what I wanted to charge from a place of what will people pay. I have to just work with what are people willing to pay. And I wasn't always in that place, but after, the whole experience, after moving here and having Year of My Soul fall flat on its face, I was very much in that space. And so the invitation that I got from Jen in her beautiful way was to tune in and, give what I do some value. Tune in and ask it, what it would like to receive, what it would like to bring to me for what I'm doing. And it's hard to articulate, but it's a very different energy of asking, of giving it some value versus, me owning my value. That's, I don't know, hopefully you get it. Just very, very different energy. And part of, the vision that Jen had is this, me sitting with people at a table, literally inviting them to a table, and in the metaphorical sense, inviting them to sit and eat and partake and have it be this, this intimate, very warm, very, rich, very rich experience. And that's, that was something that I really tuned into what my heart longed for in that experience. And then also in that last summer, I made the trip to Utah and had the huge revelation of, what I'm not any longer and what supports me and what doesn't. And so all of that happened, working, me very consciously asking for the energies of the South to be present, the energies of fire particularly. So in the fall, I got super crazy creative. It's when, I don't know why, but for whatever reason, it's what ignites my creative juices when the fall just, I want to bake all the things and make all the pottery and do all the art that I have no idea how to do. It's just, it just brings it alive in me for whatever reason. And in that time, I was feeling this strong, very particular longing and ache for freedom, for the freedom to be able to do this stuff when I wanted to do it, and just, so much, oh God, I wanted freedom so much. And I was having a conversation with Karen Bayard, and So for those of you who don't know Karen, she's this, funny, warm, bubbly person, and she also has this New York City businesswoman. She lived in New York for quite a while, and she can kind of like pull out this New York City businesswoman, and she pulled out her New York City businesswoman, and in a very kind way and loving way, but in a very direct way. She talked to me a bit about settling. And because at that point I was just like, there's got to be something else I can do. I can do all these other things that weren't being in my passion and doing my business. And she talked to me, gave me a really beautiful analogy around settling, and got me thinking about taking the safe way out a lot. And she also invited me in her New York City way to set a date for when I wanted to be done. And she, so if you could be done, when would you be done? When does it feel right? And I realized that March would be right, that's what I felt really strongly like. Okay, this is when I want to be done with Mountain Rose Herbs, that is, and moving, and have whatever way that would support me to not be working a day job. So I think it was a few weeks later, it could have been a few days later, I'm not sure of the timing of all this, but I had this conversation with Louise Eddington, and and I was telling her about this conversation with Karen, and what was up for me, and I feel like I don't know how to figure out the steps of how do I get from here to here with the income coming in, and Louise in her brilliance said, there's some steps that need to be taken, but what if you stopped focusing so much on the how and put it out to the universe that this is what you want to have happen, and then, follow what unfolds from there. Allow the universe to work on your behalf. And it was this really beautiful reminder to me because, and I'm sure all of you who know me know this, but I have this tendency to get into like constriction and work. Oh, I gotta figure it out. And then I gotta do the things, and I gotta make the things work, and I gotta come up with the plan, and then I gotta work the plan. And there is some sensibility and logic to that. Like, yes, sitting on your couch, in lotus saying Om is not going to get you what you need. There does need to be action. There does need to be a plan. But God, I've been not so great at following inspired. Like, okay, so this is what's in front of me. This feels light. Let's go with this. Let's see where this takes me. And this is what's in front of me. And how can I work with this? And how can I create with this thing that's in front of me? Instead, I try to kind of force it and plan it and make it work. And that, it's just so counterintuitive to the essence of who I am. I'm the flow within structure girl. So this was a really beautiful reminder to me to when I was trying to get into that planning mode of letting that go. And, we were getting closer to the beginning of a new year when people are like whipping out their calendars and doing their plans. And I was just really aware that I needed that to have the plans that I created be very inspired and not out of desperation or force. And it was at this time that I started working really deeply with the energies of the East. So the East is the power of air. And there were 4 elements of it that I decided. So each direction has more than just what I'm talking about. So I'm mainly just talking to you about, what I was applying. But in the East, I was working with 4 elements. The first one was the breath of life. And I was asking, so the breath of life is air. It's the literal air that fills our lungs, that allows us to live. But I also realized that I wanted money to flow to me and experiences to flow to me in a way that gave more life, that were nourishing, that brought aliveness, that brought joy. And so really working with and asking for the energies of the breath of life. What will give me more life? Bring me experiences that will give me more life. And then I also very intentionally have been working with the energies of the winds of change. So the East is also winds of change. asking specifically to bring me new experiences, to bring me change, which would support my dream and my vision. And while these winds were bringing me the new, to carry on and take away the old and the things that weren't working. And then also the energy of eagle. So the eagle has, this incredible vision. They can be several stories in the air and see a tiny little mouse on the ground, and they have the precision of vision and also the precision of movement to be able to catch that little tiny mouse going at great speed. And so I began asking for clarity of vision and clarity of knowing, currently what was in front of me, having that discernment, but also the clarity of, so it's kind of, it brings up this energy of intuition, or, seeing far out, seeing into the future, knowing, with the question in mind of like, will this, if in 5 years from now, will this have brought me more or less? Will this have created more good, or will this have not? Being able to have the discernment and the clarity. And then also the energy of hawk, which is the energy of the raptor who's riding the air currents, who's not flapping wildly, fighting against it, but who's literally just letting themselves be held and supported while looking for all that it needs. So this release of struggle and the receiving of help. And this, again, goes back to me not trying to fix and create a plan, but allowing flow, allowing things to come to me that I can then act on and do something with. And so all of this is percolating. And then between Christmas and New Year's, I took a week off, and it really brought home how much I don't want to be in a regular day job, how much I want to be doing something that allows me freedom and flow. And Dan and I had some really deep conversations around money, and I realized for the first time that I hadn't really had a clear grasp of wealth. That to me, wealth had been just having a lot of money to spend, but that really wealth is the accumulation of money. And it also a part of that can be having a lot of money to spend, but that wealth is really the accumulation of money. And that's something that I wanted a lot. And so I've never been one of those people to pick a word for the year, because being me, it would always stress me out. Like, what if I pick the wrong word? What if I bring disaster? What if I do? Oh God, you guys, you know me. Oh, silly Polly. So this year I was like, no, I'm doing it. And what I decided that I wanted was not a word, because of course, me being the rebel, I don't do that either. So my thing for the year is more than enough and better than expected. And so I began asking in lots of different areas for more than enough and better than expected. And then also very shortly after that, this really like, wow, I'm turning 49 in February in just a few weeks. And there are things, this is I'm going to be stepping into my next half century on the planet. And there are just fucking things that I am done with that I do not want to carry with me into that half century. And there are things that I do. I didn't want to carry the same scared, frightened relationship with money that I'd had. I didn't want to carry the extra weight that I've been carrying. I didn't want to carry a day job with me into my 50s. And so I began getting very intentional about, this year being from my birthday to birthday, being this year of huge creation, and what, figuring out what it is that I want to let go of, and what I really want to build and shift and change and move into the rest of my life. And all percolating in the background of this was Dan and I having the awareness that Eugene is not the place for us, that there's so much beauty and there's so much that's cool about it, but prosperity wise, it's a very depressed place, and we weren't finding what we needed in a lot of different arenas in this town. And Dan knowing he didn't want to do the same job he's doing, but there being no place to move up in the office that's here in Eugene, and knowing that, he wanted to do something different. And so as we started talking about this, especially between Christmas and New Year's, I was like, well, what if we expanded a search outside Eugene? What if we looked, we talked about moving here and seeing. And, both of us have had so much change. We've been kind of reticent, but what if this isn't our place that we're going to wind up at? And so the desire to move to Portland kind of emerged out of that, and it became kind of a thought. And then that thought became kind of no, it really feels like this is where we're going. And then about 3 weeks ago, Dan noticed that there were 2 job openings within his company, one up in Tigard, which is just outside Portland, and one in Vancouver, Washington, which is also just outside Portland. So his boss in Eugene was on vacation. He couldn't really give her a heads up, and he didn't want to wait till she came back. He decided to just go apply for them now and explain to her later. And he's kept her in the loop through this whole situation, letting her know that, he's not making as much money as he wants to make and wants to look for opportunities to move up. So she's been aware. But anyway, so within literally just a few seconds of him emailing the supervisor up in Tigard, she emailed him and she was like, oh my gosh, I was just getting ready to email you. I had a question for you. And isn't this weird? And so, he told her of our interest, and she emailed back and said, what's your time frame? And he's like, well, we'd need to give notice where we live and whatnot, but if you needed it filled quickly, we'd be willing to do whatever we needed to do. So then in the past 3 or 4 weeks, I've also been getting connected to working in a much deeper way with the ancestors, and also working with Ganesh, who I've never known about, never had a relationship with. But once I learned that Ganesh is the road opener, and learned about some of the road opening things that the ancestors are willing to do, I began working and having this desire to move, to work in a much deeper way with the ancestors. So on Sunday, I set up my ancestor altar, and I set up my altar for Ganesh, and I began just asking for a road opening as far and to bring to us the unseen good that we didn't know was coming, and also for some specific things towards clients with my business. And 2 days later, we get the email from the landlord saying they're selling the house. I was like, holy shit. And then at that point we were like, okay, it's decision time. Are we going to look for another house in Eugene, or are we going to go for this Portland thing? And we both knew, like, we want to go for this Portland thing. So the following Monday, which was this past Monday, Dan's boss came back from vacation, and he sat in her office and told her what was going on. And he said he got this really strong nudge and just found himself telling her that he felt like, God was nudging us towards Portland, and that's where we needed to be. And he's not a guy, one, he's very private. Two, he's not a guy who uses the word God. And he just said it kind of like tumbled out of my mouth. And his boss lit up like a Christmas tree. She's this evangelical Christian, and she was, oh well, I will not stand in the way of where God wants you to go, and what can I do to help, and blah blah blah. Just like totally opened her up, and they had this conversation about having faith and trust, and when you're being called somewhere to trust the process and trust that things will be taken care of. And said it was this incredibly beautiful conversation. And she began calling HR on his behalf and getting in contact with the Tigard supervisor on his behalf and doing all of this stuff. And so all of this, stuff just opened up. And so, yesterday, of course, we got the confirmation that they want him in that office. And so here we are. And it's March. Was one of the realizations that I had last night, is that it's March. And on Monday, I will be going in and giving my notice. And I will not, I'll work there for a few more weeks, but I'm completing this experience. And it was such a huge, powerful revelation for me in in a few ways. But initially when all of this stuff happened, I set up my altar for Ganesh, and 2 days later, this thing happens. I was like, whew, Ganesh, where have you been all my life? And please don't get me wrong. I have this very strong, deep connection. When I got my Ganesh, the second I touched him, tears welled up in my eyes, and I started crying because I felt such a deep affinity and such a deep connection and home feeling with this spirit. But so I know that he played a huge part in this, but I realized that up until last night, I'd been denying my own magic that I'd been working. And oh my God, that feels so amazing to realize that, like, I built a huge amount of foundational work, and I've been calling this stuff in. And Ganesh just took, and my ancestors took what I've already been creating and amped it up and just like blew everything open. But I've been creating this. And I don't say that from a place of ego, but you guys, I'm just so damn excited because it feels like the kind of the reclaiming of myself come full circle. The awareness of, what I can create. It's only March, and I already have so much that is, better than I expected and more than enough. Dan and I are starting to save money, and we've never been able to successfully long-term save money. I am halfway to my weight loss goal. The things that I didn't want to be bringing with me into my 50s are already letting go one by one. And so now I'm very consciously turning to the energies of the North, which are, dreams made real and vision made manifest. It's the energy of the physical of this realm, and asking for the dreams, the things that I want to do, for the money to flow, for all of that stuff to happen in a very concrete and real way. And anyway, so I just felt like you were the people that I felt safest with, kind of celebrating myself a little bit and going, oh my God, I did this. Oh my God. We did. And that's the part of the reason why I'm doing this, is because we did this. Each of you did this with me. Wendy, I don't know if any of you know Wendy Schimmel really well, but throughout everything that I've been experiencing, Wendy always makes me laugh, and she gets we just have this sense of humor that we get each other. But much more and much deeper than that is that Wendy holds this, and she gives permission like nobody I've ever been with any time for people to be who they are. And just because of who she is, like every time I get on the phone with her, I come back to this remembering of who I am. So many times, Wendy, our conversations saved me in the way of me remembering who I am, of me coming back to the truest space of who I am. And me getting to this point of acknowledging what I contributed in creating, what I, yes, I've been working with the magic of the elements, and yes, I've been working with the ancestors and with Ganesh, but this is also about me and just my magic, the stuff that's woven into my soul, the stuff that's in my DNA, pulling the magic from me that's just me as well, and the ability to acknowledge that. And whenever I sit and have a conversation with Wendy, I always get a glimpse of that. And we can be talking about, our eighth grade boy humor, or we can be talking about Wendy's daughter, or we can be talking about mystery school, or we can be talking about shamanic stuff, or we can be talking about, doing keto. it doesn't matter. Wendy has this incredible ability because of the space she holds for people to when they're just in her presence, to come back to a remembrance of the truth of who they are and their magic. And I do not know what I would have done without that in the past few years. It feels like a few years, past year and a half. So thank you all. The phrase "it takes a village" has been going through me a lot. And no, I'm not a child, but you guys have been my village, and you have believed in me, and you've loved me, and you've been patient, and you've stood by when I've been, not when I've been, but when I felt so damn pathetic. You kept holding the space. You kept giving me the inspiration. Angela, in the fall, when I was talking about, feeling this need for freedom, and I also had a conversation with you around the whole job thing and wanting to let it go. And one of the most profound things that you reminded me of was about not judging the job and not judging myself for getting the job. Because what we judge, we get stuck in. It concretizes things. It gums everything up, and we cannot move beyond that. And I didn't even realize until that moment how much I had been judging myself because I had a day job, because I didn't create something different. And you gave me some really beautiful wisdom on kind of like making the job my bitch, and but more than that, letting go of the judgment of it and the judgment of myself, and how that keeps me stuck. And that has also been a guiding principle for me over the past 6 months, releasing the judgment around it. And, by the way, as I've been doing these things, the job has actually gotten much, much more tolerable. Lots of different things have happened where it's become, an easier situation to go to. But anyway, the other thing with you, Angela, is that you remind me every day of what's possible. When I see your posts on Facebook with the big things and the little things that you're doing, and, having watched your journey over the past several years, it's always inspiring to me. And it's so, not in the sense of like, I saw this video of a little girl with no arms, and she's like doing all these incredible things, and that's inspiring as well. But you give me this understanding of what's possible from the perspective, not like from the perspective of having a disability and then you overcome, but just being in life and being more magic, having more possibility. And it's not that, having a disability and overcoming it is a bad thing at all, but it's a different perspective. Like, I don't need to have something. This is it. I don't need to have something to overcome in order to have this possibility. I can just have possibility, and that possibility can keep growing and expanding. And that is what, that's one of the gifts that you give me daily when I check in with your Facebook posts and I hear about what you're doing. Louise, you have been willing to give me guidance from the heavens, and also very practical guidance. And every time I've talked with you, you have just, you always let me know that I can do it. And there's never been a time when I've had a conversation with you where you haven't been a huge cheerleader, and this genuine sense that I can do it. And I don't know if you understand how valuable that is. I've had people who are like, yeah, you can do this. And I can tell they're like, but I don't know. And, energetically you can sense that. But every time I talk to you, I know that you believe in me. There's not any doubt. You just do. And it's honest and it's true and it's sincere. And that's been a huge gift. And same thing with you, Karen. Besides your just willingness to bring humor to things, our brainstorming sessions and the way in which you can ask me the tough questions that are tough but have so much love and gentleness around them. The way that you always give me things to be inspired by, and the way that you see the lens through which you see life, which always turns my lens on its ear when I'm in that space of, I'm not sure if this is possible and I don't know how I'm going to do it. There's just this deep, deep magic to you and that side of things comes forward. So, anyway, I've rambled on enough, but I love you. I love each of you, and I'm so damn grateful. I'm so blessed and honored to call you friend, to have your love and your support. And I'm sorry, I got to just say one more thing. Jen Tesneem, I almost forgot about this. So ever since the move was talked about to Oregon, Jen Tesneem has been holding this incredible space for me in this state. I have felt your energy pulling me in here. I felt your energy welcoming me in here. I've felt your energy created a home in a sense here long before we got here. And the same thing, every time I talk to you, you are just kind of in your own way have this dumbfoundedness that I'm not like booked full up with clients and like, what's going on? You're this, you're amazing. And again, I feel that genuine sense from you, and not of like just a nicety, if and you've helped me tap into the vision of the deeper, truer part of me and leading with my heart instead of trying to lead with this hard, struggling, mind crap that I do. So thank you for that. So all of you, I love you. I appreciate you. I'm grateful for you. Thank you for being on this adventure with me. Thank you for believing in me. And most of all, thank you for loving me. I love you like crazy. And I hope that soon we can be all together in one room with, hugs and stuff for real. But for now, love you. Bye.